Welcome to the Faster Podcast by FLO Cycling, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything that makes you faster on your bike. This is episode 24, and today we have Tom Anhalt from Blather Bout Bikes joining us on the show for part 2 of his interview. Tom is a mechanical engineer and avid cyclist who has a passion for studying rolling resistance and aerodynamics. Tom shares his studies on his popular blog, Blather Bout Bikes, and uses the data from his own studies to improve his cycling. During part 1 of our interview with Tom in episode 23, we covered rolling resistance. In this episode, we'll discuss what Tom knows about aerodynamics to help you go faster. All right, let's jump into the aero side of things, because you're definitely no stranger to aerodynamics and working in wind tunnels either. So You've been to the specialized wind tunnel a couple of times. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done with specialized and what you've determined?
Work? You mean play?
Play, yes.
Yeah, I've been lucky with that. Through a bunch of serendipitous events, I got to know Mark Cody and Chris Yu and Cam Piper. I'd known Mark Cody from back when he was still at MIT. He was posting on Slow Twitch, and we had conversed a few times through instant messages and email and stuff like that. And eventually he landed at Specialized, and of course he was kind of their first aero expert. Did a lot of their stuff there. And fast forward to a few years back, and another friend of mine, Jordan Rapp, who you guys are also familiar with, ex-professional triathlete. Now he's working at Zwift and actually putting in an attempt to get on the team pursuit for the Olympics in Tokyo. So
really?
Yeah, he is. You should go check out his blog. He put that out there. That he goes, I'm going to try this. So
good for him.
Yeah. Anyway, Jordan was going to be going to Kona for the Ironman triathlon championships his first time, and at that time he was sponsored by Specialized, and so he was going to go in there for kind of they had just opened their wind tunnel at the time that they had constructed themselves, and Jordan said, "Hey, I'm going to go do this. It's a one-day thing. Do you want to come and watch?" I'm like, yeah, of course I do. And then of course I of course had to push it a little further. And I said, well, Robert Chung doesn't live that far away. Can he come too? He's like, sure. Yeah. So anyway, so that ended up. So that's when I first was at the wind tunnel, and that was purely observational. So. Yeah, man, we had a great time. We got to learn all this stuff. That's when I first met Chris Yu, and got to know those guys. And it was really a good time. Learned a lot of really interesting things for Jordan's setup. Things that matter, things that don't matter. Fast forward a couple years after that, Chris contacted me and said, "Hey, we're doing this series of wind tunnel videos. You guys probably all saw that on YouTube. And we have some ideas, and we were wondering, and we've got this time set aside. I guess luckily Specialized has, they kind of like a lot of the tech companies that are in the Bay Area there. They allow people time at work to pretty much play, just because they might get some kind of innovation out of it. It's like, here's this thing you've been laying off of for a while. Why don't you go and try it, and maybe you'll learn something, and you can apply that then to the job. And so under that premise, they said, Chris called me and said, "Hey, you want to come? We got this day open. We can do whatever you want." I'm like,
nice.
Really? Why me? So I gathered a bunch of wheels and tires and all kinds of stuff, and I tried to figure out how can we, what's the most we can get out of this one day that we're doing this. And so that actually, all that stuff that I learned out of that, I put up on my blog. It was great, because that was right when they had come out with the Vengevius, and they had also redesigned the Roval CX64, I think it was, tire or wheel, and they had a set of tires that went along with it. And so they let me compare and contrast to all kinds of other things that I brought with me. Everything from one of your wheels, one of your original wheels,
Yep.
to an old Head 3, tri-spoke to all just different things. And so that was pretty good. And then just recently, this was last year. Ray Maker of DC Rainmaker was going to be at Specialized. He was in the area, and he contacted Robert Chung and myself, and the same kind of thing. Hey, I'm going to be doing this stuff here. You want to come watch?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah. So that was the last. So I've been able to go there 3 times now, and every time it was basically luck. So
awesome. Do you have any future stuff coming up with them, or you don't know? You're just waiting for the next phone call. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. One thing that we have learned over the years is that wind tunnel protocols are more important than you may think. You think you walk into a wind tunnel, you put a wheel in the wind tunnel, and it's completely fair and accurate to everything that everyone else has put in there. Can you tell us what you've learned about wind tunnel protocols and how important it is when working in a wind tunnel?
Yeah, and it's always this trade-off that you're trying to judge between being able to do a lot of data but also then being able to check yourself to make sure that what you're getting is consistent. Yep. One thing I know that in Cam Piper really insisted on this when we were doing a lot of the wheel testing was, okay, we've gone through these runs, we've done a bunch of different things, we've tried these things, okay, we're going back to the first one again, just to make sure nothing's changed. And actually a couple of times that we did that, we did find something that was a simple thing that changed in the setup of, this skewer, or they use like bolt-on skewers. This one was backed out just slightly more than another one, and it showed up in the data, at a certain angle. So, it's all about, a lot of it comes down to is you try to control as much as you can, but then the things you can't control, you want to instrument so that you can account for them. So you could account for them in whatever model that you're using. Okay. The other thing is that this happened the last time we were with Ray is it's very important to have a plan going in of what you're going to do.
Yes, it is.
and just like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, everyone has a plan for the wind tunnel until the first data comes back. Yeah. And then it changes, and then it changes again. And yeah. And so if you've never been in there and you want to do something, let's say you want to do some positioning, it is well worth it to go with someone or use someone that has done it before, so that they are, familiar with what can be accomplished in a given amount of time, reasonably, and also, to keep things on track, to do things efficiently. That was one of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and to keep the protocol useful. I made a comment on Slow Twitch a while ago about a test that was done, and I said, it may not hurt for these certain people to maybe take someone who works at a company or someone who's been there before, just to make sure that you're, crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And some people like that, I think, and others didn't. But it is important to go, I think, with somebody with experience. And John and I kind of learned the hard way the first couple times. Go in, you do this, and you get this data, and you're like, wow, we can use it, but we had to throw away all of this, and we wasted all of this money because we're not going to use data that's not good,
Right. Or that you don't have confidence in.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of the off time, trying to minimize off time, is a big thing. I know that when I did the play time that first time, and we were doing the wheels, I knew which wheels and which tires and which combinations I wanted to try. And I actually, before I even went there, because I didn't want to have it that you have a wheel and a tire in the tunnel, you do a run, and you have to pull it out, and yet on that wheel you got to switch the tire and wait for that. So I actually charted out a matrix of which combination of wheel and tire to do in what order, so that we were never waiting for a wheel to go into the tunnel. So that whatever wheel combination came out, that was now getting there was one ready to go right back in.
John and I have the same matrix
Yeah.
built.
Yeah, exactly. And it was that is why we were able to get through so many of those combinations in that short of a time, because otherwise it's amazing how quickly once the tunnel stops and the door opens and you start fiddling around with stuff, the time just disappears.
Yep. And I also think that I could win the Interbike tire change competition at this time. Nothing motivates you better than $800 an hour.
Exactly. I might give you a run for your money.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my. John, let's go to if for people going to do their own wind tunnel studies, what would be your general advice for them? If just to make sure that they have a good test if they're going to spend some money and go spend some time in a tunnel. Do you have any recommendations for them?
Well, I think we touched on it before. It's like, go if you've never done it before, you don't know what it all entails. If you've never been able to even observe, definitely find someone who has the experience to help guide you. There's like Heath Dotson is one of those guys. He and I'm trying to remember who it is he does that with. They run these like kind of aero camps, or you go see a guy like Jim Manton down at
We had him on actually. Yeah,
right,
great guy.
Exactly. Those are the kind of people you want to, because they're able to basically tell you. Let's say you come in with this, I want to test all of this stuff, and you're like, no, you're not going to be able to do that. Here, let's do the things that give you the most benefit or the most potential benefit, and that's one of the things that is nice about if you're not going to do wind tunnel testing. If you could do external testing, field testing like Chung method or whatever, you can try all those different things. You got to be a little more careful with your environmental conditions and all things like that. But those are the things to try. That you want to try different hand heights or different things like that. You don't want to do major changes when you go into a tunnel. You want to also leave room for the results that are coming back to guide you into trying something you hadn't thought of. So, that's pretty much it.
Okay, interesting. And then, so knowing what you know about aerodynamics and all the testing that you've done on road and off road, what would your general wheel selection advice be for those looking for a good all around fast set of wheels?
Are we talking for like triathlon and time trial?
Yeah.
Let's do triathlon and time trial, and then just general road riding.
Okay. Triathlon and time trial, basically a disc or a covered wheel for the rear, no matter what.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Unless you're going to Kona and they don't let you.
Yeah.
And then on the front is however deep of a wheel that you feel comfortable handling. And if you don't feel comfortable, don't reduce the depth of the wheel in the rear. Start reducing the front. For whatever given conditions you have, reduce the depth of the front until you get down to like a low profile, Mavic Open Pro.
Yep.
Then start reducing it on the rear. That's my general. There's
I have that conversation half a dozen times a week.
Yeah.
And then is road. So let's go to road now. It's just like a crit racing, stage racing, that kind of stuff.
Crit racing, anything that's in probably the 50, 60 millimeter range.
Okay.
Don't worry so much about wheel weight and this idea that you need a super lightweight wheel set to spin them up. The fact is that humans accelerate very slowly, and wheels rotation accelerates extremely slowly, and it's not the same as taking think about it this way. How much effort does it take to spin up a wheel that's sitting on a bike in a stand? You could almost do it with one finger, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the weight of the wheel, right? You can always fit. So the amount of difference in wheel rotational inertia for a crit is nothing. And even if it's multiple jumps, multiple accelerations, most of those are going to be done from a starting speed anyway, high starting speed. So really what's keeping you from accelerating from X speed to Y speed when you're starting out high is your aerodynamics. So concentrate on that instead of the mass.
So that's actually probably one of the most referenced articles I've linked to is your article that you wrote on that on Slow Twitch. And if you do the math, I think that the math of acceleration, aero versus weight, it's like 49-1, I think, where aerodynamics are 49 times more important than, I think you had a pound of wheel difference.
Yes, which is huge.
Which is
all
crazy.
All at the rim, yeah.
Yeah. So
you mentioned, you referenced, you want to be on as deep a wheel as you can handle. When you go to road and crit and stuff like that, you're saying 50 to 60 mils. Yeah. Why would you not go out to the deepest you could handle on a road or crit type situation?
Yeah, I don't know. I've raced against people who had discs in the back, covered wheels.
In a crit?
You could in road races.
Okay.
I knew a guy who, I saw a guy who would road race on a carbon P3 with drop bars and a disc, and of course he would always try to break away. If anything, so I guess if anything, you don't want to do that just so if you do try to break away, people don't try to follow you. Anyway.
Okay. All right. So you have done a lot of work, obviously, with the weight versus aero thing. I called you the godfather of that. You weren't overly proud of that name, but you really have done so much with that, breaking that myth. And then since then, you've helped us expand upon that in articles, and we've done even more with that with Ryan Cooper from Best Bike Split. He's helped us take it even further. I think I know the answer to this question. I do know the answer to this question, but I want to just get your confirmation. Are there any situations where you would prioritize wheel weight over aerodynamics?
Sure.
Okay.
It would be a hill climb of above 9%, and that's it. And that's for my power. If I was a pro tour, it would be even steeper.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. There you go. So really, and if there's course, I always say if there's any course before the climb or after the climb, you should throw the weight out anyway. If it's basically if you're climbing the Alpe d'Huez, worry about weight. If not, don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then just when it comes to the rest of the bike, are there what if you were to give somebody maybe your top 3 pieces of advice for, hey, let's get your bike from into a relatively good aero position or place, what would you recommend that people do with either their body, their equipment, or their bike?
I think a lot of things, I prefer, let's start from the bars forward. Okay. A bar that has an aerodynamic cross section across the tops is a simple thing. I mean, there's I know Bontrager makes an aluminum. It doesn't have to be a carbon bar. Bontrager makes an aluminum that has their cam tail section across the top. I use a 3T bar that actually has an aluminum version of that as well. Okay. But what I'm starting out here with is that round sections perpendicular to the airflow are bad.
Yes.
So starting at the bars on a road bike, those 2 sections of the handlebar that are coming out of the stem going directly left and right are horizontal to the airflow. So if you can use a aero section in that, there's a picture I had. Again, pictures matter. There's a picture I took of a demonstration piece that was at the Specialized Wind Tunnel last time I was there, where it was a short section of a rod that was the same diameter as exposed cable housing. Yep. And it showed that it was equivalent drag to this massive wing section that was the same height. And they were equivalent drag. And the total width of that aerodynamically shaped piece was probably, I would say, 20 to 25 times the width of the round cable section. So yeah, it's huge. I'll show you a picture.
Holy.
It's their equivalent drag, and so that's why exposed cable housing. I think what it comes down to is any round sections perpendicular to the airflow is not that great. Now, just if it's a round section but it's not perpendicular, obviously if it's angled to the wind flow in the plane of the air flowing past it, that's more of an oval, and that's not as bad. So it really is stuff that's perpendicular. And then leading edges matter a lot. So the front wheel and the front wheel tire, matching that up. As far as bar height goes, I know a lot of people like to slam their stem so that so that they think they get their body lower. But a lot of times, and you even see this with pro riders, you'll see that they end up putting the bars down so low that when they're in the drops, their arms are straight. Well, those are cylinders basically perpendicular to the airflow. I prefer to have my bars actually held a little or on the bike a little higher, so that when I'm in the drops, I actually have to bend my arms to almost a 90-degree angle just to get less of the arm perpendicular to the airflow. I like to use I also like to use a bar that has deeper drops than what the current fashion is of the real shallow drop, just so that there's more of a range of heights that I can take with the front end of the bike.
Right.
So let's see, what else is there? All this typical stuff, tight clothing, flappy things, a flappy jacket or whatever it's amazing how much drag that adds.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of go watch all the wind tunnel videos.
Yeah.
Yep. But
and
yeah.
So what are your thoughts on these truncated frame shapes? They call them squareo or things like that. So you've got the nice round shape up front. It kind of is flat, and then it's a very truncated shape. I think the Speed Concept follows some of that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Trek really kind of brought it to the fore with the original Speed Concept and their cam shape, and it's actually for what you're trying to do. It actually is a clever way of getting aero without sacrificing. It's the best combination of stiffness, lateral stiffness, twisting stiffness for that tube section, but also being aerodynamic.
Okay.
I think Specialized with the new Venge and all their kind of they had shapes, all the stuff that Ingmar went through. He came up with for the purpose of this tube in this spot, this is the widest it can be without being, less aero and less stiff. This is the, they basically tune the shapes to the function.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a crazy looking bike. That new.
Yeah.
Shift, yeah.
So as far as the truncated shapes, obviously if you filled in the rest of the tail, it would be even faster.
Okay.
But without the filled-in tail, it's better than if you had just a round tube of the equivalent width.
Oh, for sure.
Right, it's much better. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we have gotten to the last question that we ask every guest. It's called our Watt Point question, and I think you might win the competition for Watt points. So basically, the idea is if the listeners follow the advice of the expert on the show, how many watts can they save? And we base this off of a rider with a 300 watt FTP. In this situation, it's really mostly equipment based, so it's not going to really matter what the rider's FTP is. But if we take your rolling resistance advice and your aero advice, and we take it from a bad setup to a good setup, what are we talking? I think we've already determined that the tires are worth about 48 watts. So aerodynamically, what else can we save if we go from a bad position to a good position?
Or the equipment changes and all that kind of stuff. Well, just the bar alone could be like 5 to 10 watts. That the top sections. It's hard to say. I mean, depends on specifically what you're talking about, the depth of the wheels, or
let's just take a bad rider and give them everything. They get all the goods.
Probably get them another 20 watts.
Okay, awesome. Well, cool, man. We can't thank you enough for being on the show. You know so much about this industry, and I love your passion for it and how much you study it, and then share it with everybody. That's really cool that you give everyone this information. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being on the show. How can listeners learn more about you?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure if I want them to. No, I mean it comes down. This is really all a hobby for me. It's not my job. It is all a hobby, and it's all about my curiosity in those things. So I'm just that's why I'm happy to share whatever I learn, because it's stuff that I've discovered and said, this is kind of cool, and especially if it's something that goes against the grain of what people believe, or what the myth and lore, as Jobs Brandt used to call it. I think it's really cool to get the actual facts out there. So
okay, so your blog though is Blather About Bikes.
Yeah, and it's Bike Blather. Yeah, it's Blather About Bikes, but the URL is bikeblather.blogspot.com.
Perfect. All right, Tom, thank you so much. Best of luck with that leg.
Thanks,
I know
Tom.
you'll be back on a bike in no time, and I can't wait till you are.
Okay.
All right, man. Take care.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to listen to episode 25, where we discuss men's health and learn how saddle selection, urogenital health, and healthy levels of testosterone can help you become a faster cyclist. If you enjoyed the show, please help us by sharing our podcast and by leaving a rating or review. If you want to learn more about our company, FLO Cycling, please visit us online at flowcycling.com. That's F as in Frank, LOCYCLING.com. You can also find us under FLO Cycling on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, ride safe.